Hello, everybody. What is up, and welcome back. If you're new here, I'm Liz, your host here at Crimes Untold. I know we're in a different spot in my home. We're in my kitchen because I feel like it. Anywho, if you are new here, I cover true crime cases here on this channel. And also, sorry, I did not upload this yesterday. I was busy and I was taking some me time, and I gave you a little Tina Satchwell update yesterday, but that's actually the first case we're going to be discussing in this true crime roundup for this week, or true crime recap for this week. And I decided to do one every week, and I think it's something cool that I can start doing here on this channel. Also, apologies if you hear any small children in the background. I do have a life. So let's get into this today. So, as I mentioned yesterday in an update for the Tina Satchwell case, Tina Satchwell's husband, Richard Satchwell, was brought into custody or taken into custody in regards to the murder of his wife. Now, he was seen in a special court arrangement yesterday morning, and he will end up going back to another court hearing, and this next court hearing will be on the 17th. He was remanded into custody, and he has been charged with the murder of his wife. So I'm really happy that they finally said who this person was that they had in custody, because they said that there was a man in his 50s that was questioned in regards to the murder and then was taken into custody when the search on Wednesday happened, when they found her remains in the home, and the remains were skeletal. So at this time, there has been no application for bail for him to be out on bail while he's pending all of this. And he was also granted free legal counsel, basically, which is a good thing for him, that he was granted that. So next on our list is actually a John Doe case. So we're going to be briefly discussing the Mohave John Doe from 1982, because he was finally identified back on the 10th. So back in September of 1982, there was a set of remains that was discovered in a desert area, rural desert area off of Hackberry Road, which is outside of Kingman, Arizona. And it was just a few people that found these remains. So the Mohave County Sheriff's Office was called, and they recovered the remains. There was personal items found with the remains, and the remains were then transported to the ME's office in Tucson. What they determined is that this male was a Caucasian male who was 55 and older. This man was approximately 6'1" or 6'2", and they didn't know exactly what caused his death, and it's approximated that he died anywhere between 1979 and 1981. So with his remains, the personal items that they found was that of a rusty can opener, fingernail clippers that were rusty, a tattered short-sleeved shirt, a leather belt, remnants of denim pants, argyle socks, a plastic hair comb, and a toothbrush. It was a very variety of personal items that they found. So for more than 40 years, this man's remains were unknown, unclaimed. They stayed at the Mohave County Medical Examiner's Office. That's generally what happens with John and Jane Doe's. They stay there. And this person would be added to NamUs, so the National Missing and Unidentified Persons System, which is NAMUS. The U is capitalized. And his profile is UP13165. So back in February of this year, this is when the Mohave County Sheriff's Office Special Investigations Unit would team up with Othram, yet again, to use the advancement in genealogical testing in order to identify this man. So they sent evidence to Othram, which is in Woodlands, Texas. Othram then would create a DNA profile or genome in order to identify this man. And this man was then identified as that of Virgil R. Renner, who was born in 1910, or it's believed he was born in 1910. And he was from Humboldt, California. There is not a lot known about this man. He's never been married. He never had any kids. He did have siblings, one brother and one sister, and they died a long time ago. They don't know as to how or why he ended up in Arizona, other than maybe he went in the early 70s to search for gold, but they don't really know. They are kind of stumped with his case because they are not sure as to how he ended up in Arizona. Next on our list is another John Doe. It's the Cape Girardeau County John Doe from 1980. And if I said that wrong, apologies. This is in Missouri. So, also apologies for the way that I look. I probably look tired. I don't sleep very well, but that's a whole nother thing. And I also have my sippy of my black cat of coffee, which seems to be a recurring thing every time I record this video. I'm gonna have my black cat mug. Ooh, that would be fun merch to do. Anywho, so this John Doe, his case would be brought back into the limelight back in 2020 and in 2022. And this is when the Southeast Missouri Regional Crime Lab would end up sending remains to the Southeast Missouri State University. And they hoped that the anthropologists there would be able to identify them. So they did as much as they could, and eventually SEMA, which is the Southeast Missouri State University, would end up teaming up with Othram in order to identify further remains. So under the supervision of Dr. Jennifer Bengston, who basically oversees all of these anthropology students, they determined that this John Doe was male biologically. He was at least 50. He had majorly European ancestry and was approximately 5'7" in height. 5 to 7. All of his teeth, he didn't have any, and it seemed like he had some facial trauma, like prior facial trauma that had healed. They don't know how he died. There's no records that are associated with these remains at all. Eventually, or what they could find, eventually there was an intern at the Missouri State Highway Patrol Crime Lab that found a document that is in regards to the possession of these remains back in August of 1980 with the Cape Girardeau County coroner. Other than that, there's no other records. This case would be uploaded into NamUs as UP14558, and there was also a partial DNA profile that had been developed and added to CODIS. There was no hits. This man didn't match any missing persons case. There was nothing that they could go on, unfortunately. But what they did was Dr. Bengston and her students then submitted the remains to Othram because these remains were skeletal, and Othram then would start their focus of trying to find out who this was. And sometimes it takes longer because sometimes some of their John and Jane Does, they don't know exactly where they came from, who they are, which happens in a lot of these cases. Specifically this one. So back in 2020, this is when his remains were sent. And what they did between then and now is they determined that, and found different articles that maybe this man is from Missouri. Let's look into like newspapers and stuff. So one of the students ended up finding an article in the newspaper from back from July of 1980, where it describes in a farm near Gordonville, Missouri, a set of remains were found. And with this newspaper article and these remains, they seem to match. And there's different things that indicated that, okay, these are the same remains. So using this information, they then followed up with the investigators for Cape Girardeau County Sheriff's Office, and they decided to reach out to a close family relative or living relative that they had figured out through their genetic genealogy. So they obtained a DNA sample, and the follow-up with this ended up confirming that this indeed was Louis Charles Borchers of Gordonville, Missouri. So his grandparents were from Germany, hence the European descent. And he was last seen living back in February of 1980. And he was approximately 60 at the time. So also around this time is that he was institutionalized in a place that was 63 miles away from Gordonville, which is called Farmington State Mental Hospital. And it is recorded in their records that he walked away from the hospital and was never seen or heard again, which this happened with another case that I did. It was another Jane Doe where she walked away from the home she was living in. In the wooded area in which his remains were discovered on that farm was on land that was owned prior by his family. So maybe he went back there because it was somewhere familiar, but he hadn't lived there since he was younger. So at this time, there's no other updates when it comes to this case other than they identified him and they know what happened. So next is a biggie that I saw, and it's an update in the Moscow murders, the Moscow College murders, and Bryan Kohberger. So it came out that the survivors of this attack were actually awake during this attack, which A, boggles my brain. B, if they were awake, why didn't they try and do something? C, I know everybody's going to hate me for the last statement I said, but it's true. I know you can internalize yourself and stop and try and remain as quiet as possible so you won't get killed, but still it's your friends that are being attacked in another room. And all of us can say what we want without being in that situation. Because when you're finally in that situation, you don't know how you're going to act. It's like fight or flight. And most of the time people will try to flight instead of fight. The personality that I have, I would try and fight. Yes, I would probably die, but I would try and fight to help my friends. That's the only statement I'm going to say in regards to that. So, basically, it came out that there was a revelation, basically, in a new report that was added, where it said that the two surviving housemates were texting each other during this assault on their friends. Yeah. The family members have basically said that's a poor attempt of getting more attention on the case and that it's fictional news. The court has issued a gag order, a restrictive gag order, so nobody can respond to questions about these claims, thankfully. I'm sure we're going to hear about it in court whenever the session does start. But it is said that they heard everything. So they heard their friends dying. And it was partially during how should I word this? The grand jury heard this, which, obviously they've been in front of grand juries to determine what can be in place, what's allowed, what's not allowed, what's accepted and what's not accepted. If you've never followed a actual criminal trial like this before, a giant criminal trial, there are things that are not allowed to be in the case and some that are. So basically, let's kind of turn this into a little summation, will you? So back in January, there was documents that were unveiled, and basically, Bryan Kohberger's defense said that they were going to shed some light on some things and justify his arrest or whatever. Well, your DNA proves you're there, so you're there. But During this, it said that the roommate that was on the second floor of the 3 floors of the house heard noises at 4 a.m. and she told the police this. She believed that the sounds were coming from, from Kaylee's room. And she believed that Kaylee was playing with her dog on the top level. Police obviously would later find that Madison and Kaylee were dead in the upstairs bedroom. But, also according to their affidavit, it says that she heard Kaylee say, "There's someone here." This roommate then peeked out of her room, didn't see anything. And this is in the affidavit. So this is all noted. It's all on legal documents. All of this is on legal documents. So if they try and refute this, I don't know. Also, Xana's phone, she was using TikTok at 4:12 a.m. A little bit after this, the housemate heard crying from Xana's room, which is on the same floor, on the second floor. And this is also in the affidavit, and says that this roommate peeked out of the room and heard a man saying, "It's okay, I'm going to help you." Was that Bryan saying, "It's okay, I'm going to help you"? I know everybody has heard that statement. That has been something that's been out in the public for a while. But was that Bryan saying that? This roommate, which this is also out in the open, said that she opened her door for a 3rd time, saw a masked man leaving through the rear sliding door of the home. She described him to the police as not muscular, kind of athletically built, and had bushy eyebrows. She also told them that she was frozen in fear or frozen in shock, and he just walked by her out the door. All of their friends, were killed prior to 4:25 a.m. So within the span of, 4:12 to 4:25, that's when Xana died. That's a pretty small window. That's a 12-minute window that he had to kill her. The 911 call didn't come until the following day at noon, which I also don't understand as well. Why did it take so long for them to call 911? Your friends are dead in your home. You heard everything. Why did it take so long? Unless something else happened in that house that they needed to cover up. I don't know. And I'm not saying that to throw like a conspiracy theory out on this, but one of the 2 survivors are the ones that called 911. This is also public knowledge. So if anybody tries to be like, you're not talking about the facts right. This is public knowledge. This is out publicly that one of them called the police. They refused to say who they were, and the police refused to say who actually made this phone call, other than it's one of their survivors. The officers obviously went to the home, and when they searched the home, this is when they found the K-bar knife sheath, which is alleged, which is said in everything, that it has Bryan Kohberger's DNA on it. Which they found this in one of the bedrooms. Hold on. They found it in I'll just say Madison's room, because half of the last names I probably won't be able to say right. The other survivor is not talked about a lot in any of these reports. He agreed to an interview with the defense lawyers for Bryan Kohberger, and this was after he resisted a subpoena for this case. I'm assuming this is a male. It could be another female. I don't know. When this case first broke, I wasn't paying attention to the biological gender or biological sex of these people. If I said that right. If I didn't, whatever. I wasn't paying attention to what they identify as. I was paying attention to more the victims and who they thought committed this. Because this other housemate, there's not a lot about this person, which is shocking. You think that if there's two survivors in a case like this, they would mention both of them equally. Not just one, because she heard everything, she saw the killer, all of that. You would mention both of them, because if the other one is also awake because they're texting each other, this other person is going to know also what happened. And you're going to hear it from their perspective, not just hers, but from theirs. So, obviously we know that Bryan Kohberger was arrested, yada, yada, yada. We know that due to the DNA that was found on this sheath. I'm not going to go over that whatsoever. I will say, though, as of 2 weeks ago, if I did put this up on Saturday, then I would have said the prior week. But as of 2 weeks ago, because this is Sunday, the judge denied his stay of proceedings and canceled pausing a speedy trial, which was already waived, because Bryan Kohberger does not want a speedy trial. He wants this drawn out. I get it. That way they actually have time to build a case on both sides, which is fine. And I'm staying neutral with this. Obviously, I do believe that he is guilty. Based on the facts that I've seen, I do believe he is guilty. But in order to be an outsider actually paying attention to this case, you need to be a white flag. You can't automatically pick sides. And that's to be unbiased. He was charged with four charges of first-degree murder and felony burglary. So in order to get the death penalty, there needs to be an underlying factor with it. I believe it's, burglary and some malicious intent. And because they added the felony burglary charge, automatically is a death penalty case. This varies state by state, but I know Idaho is one of the ones where if you have an underlying cause that goes with the murder, you're done. That's a death penalty case. Unless they refute that charge, then it's either life in prison or a max term case. If this was in Colorado, he would end up in the supermax prison, but I mean, no. So, back on, October 26th, this is when they heard arguments about a request to dismiss the indictment, which obviously was shot down. And currently at this time, he is being held at the Latah, Latah County Jail in Moscow. So that's been pretty interesting to see those updates when it comes to that case. Where is my little tab? I'll pull it up. So the next thing I wanted to quickly touch base on is about the Gabby petitio case, because there has been an update on it because of the families saw each other for the first time face to face, which is, I'm surprised it took so long for them to actually see each other face to face. But I feel so bad for Gabby's parents because they finally have to see Brian Laundrie's parents. So it's a lot of the newspaper articles I've seen in regards to his parents. It talks a lot about his parents like driving his silver Mustang and like not seeming to have a care or whatever. And this Mustang in particular is the same one that was parked at that park. I'm not going to say this right, but I'm going to try. The Myakkahatchee Creek Environmental Park. This is where he snuck out of his parents' home. He had a waterproof bag, and he had one of his dad's pistols. And I'm pretty sure this is where they found his remains, because they found his suicide note where he did say that he killed Gabby in Wyoming. And obviously we know that he killed himself via suicide, or as people like to say, unalived himself. So they, on Wednesday, finally had a sit-down face-to-face with the Petitio Schmidt family and with Brian Laundrie's family. And I would imagine it was pretty awkward. Gabby's dad said that it was a lot to handle emotionally, which I'm sure it would be. You're facing the people that birthed a person that killed your child. I would imagine if I ever had to go through anything like that, which, goodness, I hope I never have to, that it will be horrific for them. The torment they're going to endure overhearing everything that happened to Gabby is going to hurt them so much. And I'm not dissing Bryan's parents, because they also will have to hear everything that their son did to Gabby, but also hearing about his suicide as well. So it will be a lot for both parties to handle when it does come to like further depositions, because I believe it's a wrongful death suit or something that's happening right now. There's a lot that's happening between the Schmidt Petitio family and the Laundrie family. And, or it was a wrongful death suit, because I know that Gabby's family ended up winning, and they won, I think it was like $3 million. But yeah, I wanted just to kind of discuss that a little bit, because it was something that's back in the forefront in the media because of, unfortunately, everything with their parents, everything that's finalizing through the court system between them. It would be pretty rough for them to kind of go over. So next I'm going to briefly talk about Mr. Sergio Brown. Like I've mentioned over in TikTok, the same day he was caught, I ended up basically saying that he was found in Mexico. He was brought back to San Diego. He is awaiting extradition back to Illinois, where he indeed killed his mother. His mother died due to trauma inflicted during a altercation. His mother is 73-year-old Myrtle Brown, and Sergio Brown has been charged with first-degree murder in her death. And he's a very strange man. Both of them were reported missing back on September 16th. And that same day is when they found Myrtle dead, not far from their home that they shared, and her body was near a creek. Myrtle was brought to the ME's office, the Cook County Medical Examiner's office, and her death was ruled a homicide from injuries sustained during an assault. There is images of where exactly her body was found, because it was found near the creek that's on the family property in her home in Chicago. Because things are the way things are, on social media there is a video of Sergio Brown, and he's in a warmer climate, maybe a tropical climate, that says something about fake news. He's rambling about fake news, thinking that his mom's on vacation. They don't know where this was taken, when it was taken, but that it was indeed Sergio Brown in this video. Their family doesn't understand what happened, as nobody really should. I mean, it's possible that Sergio snapped and this happened. I mean, he is a football player. If he has a history of hitting his head or hurting himself or being hurt on the field, maybe he has CTE, but unfortunately that will not be, you can't confirm that until after they die. So that's my little update about Sergio Brown. I also covered that over on TikTok. Next, I'm going to discuss a disappearance. This is a disappearance that happened in 2016. This is about AVa Grace Baldwin, or what was it? No, September of 2015. Apologies. So AVa Grace Baldwin was 6 years old the last time her dad saw her. And her dad believes that his ex-wife took her and has been hiding her for years. This was updated back on the 5th of October. And it is possible that her mother took her. Her dad got a call from the elementary school back in September of 2015, letting him know that AVa hadn't been showing up for school for 21 days. And they asked him where she was. So AVa was actually with her mother, Catherine Baldwin, at the time. And her mother lived in San Antonio, Texas, and her father, David Hopper, lived in central Oklahoma, which is about a 7-hour drive. AVa was born after her parents' very brief marriage, or born to the couple after a very brief marriage. There was police that went out to that location of where his ex-wife did live, but it was an empty lot. And that's when they realized that, hey, something's not right. It also goes into... Ooh, I just got another update, so I'll talk about that too. It also goes into basically an article in which the father... We haven't heard anything from the mother, but David says that he tried to be a father to AVa as soon as he found out that Catherine was pregnant. And he tried everything in his power to be the dad that she deserved, which is very positively reassuring hearing from a parent like that. Because you don't always see things like that, especially with a short-lived marriage. So, unfortunately, this case gets worse and worse. AVa's mom, there's a video that involves SA and AVa. And not abuse on AVa, but AVa is in the video, in which there is an act of a sexual nature happening. CPS was involved, and CPS took AVa, basically, or AVa's aunt ended up getting kind of like temporary custody of AVa, and that's when David was really involved in it. He ended up with partial custody. He would drive to pick up AVa. He tried, like I said, he tried to be the dad that she needed to be, and unfortunately, his ex-wife would run. If something happened, she'd run. If she was in trouble, she would go to another county. She would just keep moving and moving and moving. She has warrants for interfering with child custody. She also has a history of drug abuse. She has mental illness, and she has a history of abusing alcohol, which makes this case even worse. David requested full custody because of all these concerns and because of Catherine's inability to keep AVa safe. And then they disappeared. Then Catherine and AVa disappeared. The last time anybody saw the vehicle that Catherine had was back in April of 2016, and this was 7 months after they disappeared. This was a 2014 Ford Escape that was silver. AVa at this time would be 14, and David does have full custody of her, which is unfortunate because she is still missing. There is a theory that Catherine's family has been hiding them for years, but there's no proof. They have been unable to locate both of them. They are still investigating this case as a non-custodial parent abduction, which is very, very hardcore case. So when they find her, there is no refuting. She is going to jail for the rest of her life. It is known that AVa is terrified of her mother, and even Catherine's other child, who is an adult now, she was raised by another family. She's terrified for her sister. She knows that her mom had a very traumatic life, and she chose the wrong things, but she's very terrified for her sister. It is hopeful that AVa is alive, and I'm really surprised that nobody's talking about this, because this is a very scary situation. There's things like this that happen and get swept under the rug, and nobody talks about them, and that's why I'm discussing it in this true crime roundup. And I know this is going to be a very long video, but you guys enjoy this very long video. So we have a few more things that I want to discuss. The next one is Tim Ferriter. Tim Ferriter was found guilty on all counts of child abuse. So this man, also something that I didn't realize was going on because I don't live in Florida. So this is in Jupiter, Florida. So Tracy and Timothy Ferriter would lock their children in a room, in a garage, in order to discipline them, which is disgusting and disturbing. I don't care how you take that. It's disgusting and disturbing. He was found guilty of false imprisonment and child neglect, and he faces up to 40 years in prison. He didn't testify on his own behalf. He ended up relying on friends and family and a child psychologist that said that he's just misguided. I'm sorry, you locked your children in a cage in the garage for hours at a time. That's wrong. This reminds me of the stuff that's going on with the 8 passengers' mom, Ruby, and the psychologist that lived next door. Oh man, it reminds me of them so bad. But this has been covered live by Court TV, and the primary custody in this case is a teenager who is the center of these abuse allegations. And the older siblings are also involved. There's another child psychologist. There's a lot that went into this. That included the treatment of this one child in particular and how cruel, psychologically damning, and malicious it was. They also showed pieces of video evidence of this child inside of the structure in the garage, which is also terrifying. This teen is heard crying while they're alone inside of this structure. My heart would break for them. So he was presented a plea deal, unfortunately, which he would have gone to prison for 2 years and had 5 years of probation following that. But now he is facing up to 40 years in prison. His defense lawyer is seeking to have him placed on house arrest instead of going to prison, which I think is a farce, and I'm sorry. You hurt your child. No, you need to go to prison. So next, there was some skeletal remains that were found in Fort Worth. Something that just popped up on the 10th. Haven't heard anybody talking about this one either. There was remains found behind the Tarrant County business office the other day. They were on Camp Bowie West Boulevard in the 1200 block, and it was out of sight, but a lot of people passed by it. At this time, there's no information being released about these remains, but that it was released that they did find remains here. They did say if they were able to identify this person and determine the cause of death, they would then publicly release the identity after next of kin would be identified. So that is that as a quick update. What's the next one? The next one is actually in France. This is a high school in France, in Arras, France. Hopefully I said that right. At Gambetta High School. So Gambetta High School is about 115 miles north of Paris. And Friday, a teacher was killed, and there was several other people that were wounded in a knife attack. So on Friday the 13th. And this happened at around 11 a.m. at Gambetta High School. The teacher that was killed was a French language teacher. There was a second teacher and a security guard that was wounded. Their identity has not been released. The suspect was arrested on Friday morning after this. The suspect is of Chechen origin, and he's in his 20s. He shouted, Allahu Akbar, hopefully I said that right, or Allahu Akbar, and God is greatest. His brother also was taken into custody because of this attack. I haven't seen anybody discuss this. That's why I wanted to bring this up. Also, with what news bulletin I just got, it was a breaking news thing. So apparently, at a Texas State Fair, there was a shooting. This was reported as early as 14 hours ago. It's the Dallas State Fair shooting that happened. Let's see. I'm pulling up the article now as I record, so that way I have my facts straight when it comes to this. So, let's see. And also timeline-wise. This fair has been delayed to open today due to this shooting. So, they're opening at 2 p.m. today due to the shooting that happened on Saturday night. Actually, that doesn't surprise me. So, let's see what it says. At around 7:45 p.m., there was shooting that was heard in the fair's food court, and this panicked the ongoers of the fair, as it should. The shooter was identified and taken into custody. This suspect's name has not been released as of now, not that I've seen. An update that happened on X, or if you don't know what X is, it was Twitter, but now it's X, whatever. The State Fair of Texas did update that due to the incident, the entire fair was evacuated and their investigation started. The State Fair obviously plans to reopen at 2 p.m. today. I guess the biggest answer is whether this shooter brought the firearm with him and how he was able to bring it in. If not, where did he hide it prior to going in? You know what I mean? Because on the website for the fair, it says that no weapons of any kind is permitted on the fairgrounds, and anybody that attends has to have a firearm license or a handgun license. And in order to carry in Texas, you need to have a license. So did this person have a license? Was it allowed? I mean, all of the fairgoers go through an open gate kind of system. And basically what it is it's a large metal detector they have to walk through, which detects guns and other metal items and stuff like that. I have to go through one for work. So, yes, this person could have a license to carry a firearm, but what does this mean for future crimes, for future gun crimes? And I'm not pro-gun, against gun, whatever. This should really put things into more perspective for people, because when we talk about shootings like this, it's not the same people that are doing it. They have different backgrounds. Yes, they have similar issues, but they have different backgrounds. We need to not focus so much on the guns. We need to focus more on the mental health that's affecting these people, which seems to be a recurring theme that people are not doing. You need to focus on how they're affected before they do this. How these people are mentally and physically affected by what's around them prior to them causing things like this. If people actually listened to cases when it comes to public shootings and listened to what their life was like prior to these shootings, maybe they would understand that mental health is actually a thing that we need to focus on in this country before gun control. That's all I'm going to say on that. And whoever comments down below, believe what you want to, that's what I think. So, that, my friends, is this week's True Crime Roundup, which is 43 minutes long. Hopefully, I should be able to put this on TikTok. It'll probably just break it down into multiple parts, which is fine. So, you can find it over on TikTok. My handle is Crimes Untold, or Liz Austin 1999, I think. That's what the at thing is, or whatever. Or obviously here on YouTube. I do have a link for TikTok down below in my description box. That way you can just click it and it'll bring you to my profile. I just hit over 1,000 followers over there. Woo! Come on, people. If you're watching my videos, like and subscribe here on my channel. That way you get more content. All right, goodbye.